Listen, I don't want to be negative. I love For Honor. Sometimes more, sometimes a lot less. This game implements genre-defining mechanics way too successfully to not have become a staple in gaming. The stance widget system and the way fighting against multiple opponents works are just absolutely revolutionary when it comes to fighting games. With such a strong foundation, the path of success is basically set. You just have to follow it. Yet, somewhere along the road, Ubi comes along.
Hello, I like money.
Ubisoft, somehow doing what Ubi does best, they fuck everything up. The severe and continuous balancing oversights, or as a matter of fact, balancing failures, have reached critical mass. Season 2 of Year 9 has made problems that the game had from day 1 even more prevalent. Let me explain. It is common for modern games to have a disconnect between the people who are making the game and the people who are playing the game. There is a clear lack of understanding when it comes to the devs and how to design and balance the game. Talking about balance, let's look at the thing that impacts balance the most. Heroes. The latest hero releases weren't blatantly overpowered, unlike certain other heroes. Yet, they all share a very similar problem. Suhai is the backbone of this channel, and has become my most played hero. Even regarding how much I like playing as him, not even I could deny that the fact that him just existing is a balancing nightmare. Nuking people off the map for just looking at you funny, and becoming a literal boss fight are just the tip of the iceberg. I made an in-depth analysis where I went over the steps I would take to make not only playing as him, but also against him more enjoyable. He creates scenarios where even before the game has started, you're already thinking of quitting. Not because he's overpowered, but because he's just unfun to play against. On a design standpoint though, he's perfect. If he were a character in a single-player game. You can understand the thought process behind the developers, gaining power through different combo finishers in order to unleash one devastating attack. The way it was implemented though, leaves a lot to be desired. Katun shares similar problems. For beginners, Katun's soft feint 400 millisecond lights are hell. Just throwing these out constantly will win you fights. Since she has access to soft feints out of neutral and can create a lot of pressure from that, the developers made the decision to make her combos feel a whole lot more sluggish by forcing you to use her running stance. This balancing decision made it so that Katun is basically always guard break vulnerable when she's fighting against multiple opponents. Her quick access to a pinning unblockable also makes group fights against her feel very bad. Since I'm already talking about the running stance, her running stance auto-deflecting everything creates situations where she gets insane rewards for little to no risk, since guard breaking her during ganks will leave you wide open. To quickly summarize the shortcomings of Katun, creating a meaningful offense is incredibly sluggish. Her high stamina consumption combined with her overall good but inconsistent damage makes her 1v1 game very weak. In the minion, her pins and her running stance make her an absolute menace to face. Let me hone in on that last point. Something that the community strangely isn't talking about more are passive defense stances. What I mean by that are stances that can be sustained by just holding down one button. For example, Kyoshin. In duel scenarios, their defensive capabilities are counteracted by their guard break vulnerability and their vulnerability to unblockables. With the stage now being set, let us talk about the Italian-shaped problem that came with the latest release. For beginners, her posture is basically a full block on steroids. With no player input being required, as soon as you enter posture, you will dodge every attack that isn't an dodgeable. This means that 2 out of the 3 main ways to deal with full block stances, meaning unblockable and bashes, straight up don't work. Let me visualize something for you guys. These are all the heroes with full block stances. And here are all the heroes with unblockables. Now, here is our least favorite Italian. And here are all the heroes with undodgeable attacks. Now, factor in that most undodgeables are combo attacks, and her insanely fast pokes can interrupt your combos. Whoever designed her though knew that postures are too strong, since they programmed it so that she doesn't regenerate stamina while she's in a posture. The overabundance and lack of any meaningful downside when it comes to full block makes the minion into a slugfest. Full block stances aren't the most effective strategy, but because how easily they can be utilized, they provide too much value to be ignored. This perfectly links to my next point. Since the revenge changes had some time to settle in, I can now confidently say that stalling out zones is absolute meta. Stalling was already very strong, but now it seems like it is the only reliable way to make any progress. This problem is only expedited by full block stances, since with just the press of one button, they remove you out of the fight. The revenge changes were meant to help the player on the receiving end of the gank out by reducing the damage of certain setups. The only thing that has changed though is that people will still use these setups to hit you down to critical health and will then consistently disengage out of the fight. Revenge and ganking are already very complicated mechanics in the game, and these changes made attacking at the wrong time during ganks even more punishing, making the experience for newer players even more horrible. Certain hero releases and reworks, combined with some totally misguided blanket changes, show a great lack of understanding when it comes to the game. Another major talking point is the hero balance, without going into too much depth, because everything negative I say about certain heroes will only generate dislikes from now on. It is okay that certain heroes are better than others. It's good that not every hero is just a reskin of one another, but holy hell the current top heroes in the game need addressing. Orochi and Lawbringer both became absolute staples in the game after their reworks, and they have consistently stayed at the top tiers. The only reason they aren't any higher than they are is because of one pistol-wielding maniac. Pirate has been, and even after a major nerf, still is by far the strongest hero. I am not calling for any hero to be nerfed into the ground, but small changes to things like their stamina would go a long way. It just doesn't feel right that my poor little fat Suhai can only do 2 mix-ups before running out of stamina, while Pirate is giving herself a concussion with all the spins she's doing. Continuing in this trail of thought, somebody who is in charge of the major balancing of the game just isn't doing it right. Of course, doing changes based on the entirety of the player base just isn't an option, due to the vastly different skill levels present in the game. But something that shows this disconnect off are the testing runs. Yes, they are an experimental mode to test potential changes. That doesn't excuse the shit they have been pulling lately. Listen, I'm fully aware that these are just tests, but certain changes are just so outlandish that they would never even cross my mind. How? And I mean, how the fuck was anyone thinking that a front step full deflect is a good idea? How did anyone think Circus feats are fine? Who thought giving heroes damaging first feats is a good idea in the first place? Listen, this for me just shows that people in charge of designing and balancing the game are not playing the same game that we are playing. Before I wrap things up though, something that makes me very sad is that there is clearly someone on the For Honor team that knows what it takes to make good content. The latest maps that were released, especially Viking Village and Canyon, are absolute masterpieces. Multiple safe entrances to zones with large openings, and most importantly, a lack of effective environmental hazards. It's nearly impossible for a layperson to make these adjustments. It truly requires a deeper understanding of the game. If you have anything to add to this or have any criticism for me, please leave a comment down below. But with all of that being said, I have just one more thing to say. Watch yourselves out there, okay?